In this video, we're going to look at how to identify Japanese woodcut prints. Now, you might have obtained one at a boot sale or a fair, or been given one even, and you naturally may wonder, well, how much is it worth? Now, there's a word of warning here. Value is hugely dependent on condition, and you have to be very careful of that. Now here we have two typical woodcuts, which we will look at in some detail because we have to determine if they are genuine woodcuts and also, very importantly, whether they are what you might call the first edition or from the first set of blocks. When the blocks have worn out, they are recut, and then those are naturally called recuts, and they are of less value, significantly less value in actual fact. So if we look at these two prints from the reverse side, we'll see something quite interesting, and that is to say, the one on the left we can see it has printed through. And this is an aspect of woodcut. So it's less likely to be a woodcut if you haven't got this print through. But I have found on some smaller, more what you might call subtle woodcuts that this is less obvious. And now we look at the surface to see if it's just what we might call an ordinary reproduction. This is a USB microscope, and you can see here that we have this regular pattern, which tells us immediately it's not a woodcut. It's a later form of printing method, whereas a woodcut has what would be all full of blocks of colour. They are somewhat irregular, but you can see here that they haven't got that geometric pattern. And this means that the ink has been applied by pressure. So we now have to take a photograph of the image, and that is the one on the left, which is the woodcut, to go on to Google to compare it. And there's a very good site on Google, which we will type in identify Japanese woodcuts. And if you scroll down, you'll find this really good site, which is Japanese Woodblock Print Search. This site is extremely effective. You just load your image that you've taken, which hopefully you've saved on your computer and you can actually find, and then press the search, and it will go through its database, and hey presto, will come up with others, and here they are, which is found. Now we find out who the artist is and the title of the work. With this information, we can now search Google to see if we have a high-valued artist and perhaps get some idea of the value of this print. So I'm copying in the name and I'm going to search for him on Google, and here we go. And I've just put in the here's an indication of the prices raised by this artist, and you can see goes to a very high level. But this is by no means the end of the story. It does mean potentially we may have something of value, but we do need to know if we have what you might term a first edition, because those are the wood cuts that make the money. So we go back to the site and we copy and save the image from the Japanese woodcut search, and we're going to save that on the computer and compare the two images together closely to see if we can identify any differences. Because, as I said, the later editions are what are known as recuts, and it's quite impossible to cut a block of wood to exactly the same, to produce exactly the same print. So here we have them side by side. And what you have to do now is to magnify an intricate section. For comparison purposes. And if we compare these two, we can immediately see that there is a difference in the way that these dashes are formed. And at this stage, don't worry too much about the colour because prints do fade, and at times they did use different colours on the blocks. So it's not hugely important. But you do have to compare the sizes, which are stated on the like the British Museum site, and you would expect them to be very close. But a few millimeters difference is okay because paper is paper and it does vary somewhat. But here again, we can see there's a distinct difference between the markings here. So we know that the print that I've been showing you isn't a first edition, and it isn't worth the vast amounts of money which would be achieved by a first edition print.